So tonight's webinar, if you don't know, is how to approach a lighting design concept. And what we wanted to do or share in this session is basically how some of us might approach creating lighting designs basically from the beginning. And I had asked Ken Martin, he's our guest speaker, and actually he's got a little presentation to run us through, which is wonderful because I had a major glitch again on my computer today. I ended up losing the PowerPoint presentation that I put together for this. So it might have been a little drier if it weren't for the fact that Ken's here. So that's good. Ken Martin is a highly seasoned landscape lighting designer out of St. George, Ontario, Canada. And I met him back in the early to mid 2000s. We were part of the AOLP together, and that's how our association became familiar. And then we both worked a little bit with, well, I only a little bit, but he worked more aggressively with Jan Moyer, who's internationally recognized, and then Greg Yale, which is another leading architect out of New York area. So let's get Ken involved here. I'll let him explain a little bit more about his background and his history, and then he can start up the presentation. And then, as always, if you have questions that you want to ask, just jump in at any time. Okay? Ken, would you like to share with us?
Sure. Okay, so I'm just gonna share my screen with everybody.
Okay.
Okay. So as Mark said, I'm the owner of my company, although it's probably a pretty crappy name over the years, but it's stuck and I didn't want to change it. So, but it's Copper Expressions, and I typically just say landscape lighting by Copper Expressions. So I'm an electrician by trade, and I worked in the industry for many years. And in my spare time, I kind of started working outside and thoroughly enjoyed that. And then I decided to muck around with some landscape lighting, just around my house. And when I first that's when I first started developing a little bit of a passion for it. And I understood at that time there's going to be a huge learning curve here if I really wanted to kind of move forward with it. So I was a sponge and I soaked up as much information as I could from all the people in the landscape lighting industry. AOLP, back then it was Jan's class. There was online forums. There was just so many people. I had a few people here in Ontario. We joined Landscape Ontario. We have a group here, which is huge, but they have a lighting division. So I sit on that lighting commodity group as well. So back in 2010, I took a class at Jan Moyer's. And then kind of from then on, I was kind of volunteering my time and mentoring as that whole kind of program tried to blossom and went on. And so I eventually started opening up my own business. Essentially in 2009 is when I first started. And I knew I needed that design training or help with it. So that's what made me take that course. So after the course, of I got to know Jan pretty good, and then there were some other people there. So I actually put my business on hold for about 2 years and followed her around. I was her shadow, is what she used to call me. So I had the pleasure of, pretty much going through three projects from beginning to end, from meeting the client, and watching that process happen from the design stage to the final stage of watching other people do installation, because Jan just does design work. But I also, for me, I learned a lot from that. And then she hooked me up with Greg Yale to give me some diversity. And Greg was a totally different designer, very artistic, and I just captured a lot of stuff. I spent probably, I'd say, about 3 or 4 jobs with Greg, watching him do what he did. So that's a little bit about me. Um, any questions? No. All right. Mark, am I still, you can hear me,
Yeah,
everything?
you're good to
Oh,
go
yeah, yeah.
on your
You're all
side.
good.
Okay. So I'm just going to run through this presentation. I've kind of adjusted it a bit. This presentation kind of goes through how I start looking at a project and how I approach that project and some of the tools that I've been taught. And I'm not necessarily saying that these are the ultimate tools, but this is just how I do it. And I kind of have been doing it for so long that it's just become, nature. Like I'm just doing it naturally. I always fall back to these ground points with every project, and it just seems to work for me. So landscape lighting offers an incredible expansion of the enjoyment of both residential and commercial properties. It makes outdoor spaces usable at night and adds a magical view into the landscape from interior spaces. However, to produce effective landscape lighting, you will require knowledge, skill, creativity, and thorough planning. There are many really good landscape lighting designers out there. Sorry. There are many really good landscape lighting designers out there, and every one of them have their own unique design styles. All of them most likely will follow similar steps that are essential in creating a lighting design. And I'd like to share some of my steps within the next few slides. And this is how I begin kind of creating my designs, and I hope you'll find these helpful. So, design with predictable results. Quality lighting design begins with study, research, and communication skills. It is important that careful consideration be given to a seemingly unending list of details. So I want to try to gather as much information as I can during this. So effectively, I have these knowledge essential needs, can, and effectively collecting information about the project, and it directs development of a responsive design concept and a project budget. And projects are made up of teams. The other players on the team can influence how your lighting design and installation develops and how the installation proceeds. So I start off taking lots of notes and I start documenting from day one. So before I even think about starting a design, I always want a lot of information about everything. Is it a fully developed and mature landscape site, or is it just dirt and all I have are drawings to work with? No matter the scenario, I still need to gather as much information as I can. And trust me when I say this, the client will ultimately end up with a truly unique, artistic, and custom lighting scene, and one they will love only if you persist in gathering as much information as you can. Details are important, and all of this helps to guide in choosing which areas and elements to illuminate. So that information gathering, we're gonna classify them. This is kind of like what I do. I interview the client and other design team members. I try to review plans if there's any to gain an understanding of the landscape design and the concepts. And I'm going to go into detail in the next few slides of each of these. So you can read, like visiting the daytime, nighttime to gain a visual understanding of the project. Really important at nighttime sometimes because there could be street lights, there could be neighbors' lights that you weren't aware of. And that really influences on your design, especially if you're thinking about doing a very subtle soft little area in the back, and then you have a nice big glare bomb next door that's, putting light pollution down in your area, it's going to wreck your scene. So you should really, look at that. I take lots of pictures. Like I said to Mark, I have over 20 terabytes of hard drive sitting at home, and I take a ton of pictures. I sit on the site, and depending on the area, and if I've got a site to work with, I'll do a complete 360 so that all those pictures are kind of joining. So I have a really good picture of what I'm doing. And those pictures are usually taken after I've kind of gathered a little bit of information from the client. So next slide. So, who should I be interviewing and gathering this information? Well, it depends on the project, the owner, the client, owner's representative sometimes, and there could be other designers. I might not even get to talk to a client. There might be an architect or a landscape architect or a garden designer, an interior designer. Really, I want to try to talk to the homeowner, but sometimes in my history, I just haven't been able to talk to the homeowner, which is probably the most frustrating for me.
Mhm.
So there could be specialists, arborists, horticulturists. There could be artists involved. And, and then you've got in the construction phase, you've got contractors, electricians, controls, irrigation, etc. Blah, blah, blah. So questions for your client. Allow them to provide information regarding needs and desires. Listen carefully and take notes. Discuss their personal feelings about light, anticipated use of the landscape at night. What can they view from within their home? What features or elements are important to them? And don't forget about understanding their budget. That's a big one. So if other members are present, such as the architect or the landscape architect, this kind of gives you a little bit of a chance to discuss what their visions are for the space. After all, they're developing the landscape, right? So they might have a theme going on. So you really want to try to capture what they're trying to capture during the daytime. Sometimes at night, there might be things that might be a little bit different, but you should try to flow that in and try to accommodate. It sort of becomes a group discussion to reach a goal of delivering a quality design and installation. And I'm old school, so I like to write everything down on paper during these discussion sessions. And I'll have a pad of paper and I'll be drawing and I'll be sketching and I'll be writing all of these notes because I know I need to gather all of this information. So then on some jobs, maybe even on current jobs that have had some landscaping, you'll be fortunate enough that you are given some plans. And you could get a site plan, a demolition plan, grading plan, all of those different plans. And all this information will help you to create your conceptual landscape lighting design, safety, special features within the landscape, elements, light levels, techniques, fixture choice, along with accessories, and power distribution and power requirements. Many of my projects have always involved other players, and their involvement occurs at different stages of the project. For example, I know that I'm going to require underground raceways for power distribution for the lighting system. So I want to ensure that I educate them and inform them before they actually begin building walkways and planters and retaining walls. Conduit and piping is a relatively low cost, so I always ensure that that there are lots of them going in and documented on drawings with measurements so that we know where to find them. Usually I get them to stub it up if we're doing like for landscape lighting. And I can't tell you how many times that I've done this and I'm there working and the irrigation guy will come in and he'll be using a sleeve and no one else thought about the sleeves. And what ends up happening is that after the project is all done and completed, people are kind of coming up to me and saying, "Hey, do you still have those drawings with all those pipes in it? We're adding something here." So that's why it's really, really important once you've kind of gathered that all that information that you start documenting from day one. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you a technique that I use, and then I'm going to run through 2 or 3 projects, and I'm going to show you how I applied all of that gathering of information before I even started the design. I want to show you visually that you need this information. Otherwise, you're just going to be in a pickle, and you might have to call back, you might have to do that. So I want you guys to kind of learn from my mistakes. And so I'm trying to present the best way that works for me. It might not work for you guys, but this is what works for me, and take it as it is. So design with predictable results. So I'm going to use project examples, as I said, and the first project example describes a design technique that I was taught by Jan, and I still use this today. It was so helpful in making me understand just how important light levels are. And at this point, I've pretty much gathered all the information that was offered by the clients and everybody else. And now I know I need to think about all the items on the slide. So I need to figure out the focal point and the elements, determine the light levels, and I want to figure out the overall adhesive. Those are all the things that I got to try to put all together. So here's a daytime picture of an area that the client expressed security concerns because of the street on the left. The client also routinely walks in this area towards the large urn. There is a hedge behind a couple of steps just in front of the urn, but you really can't see them here. This lighting system was installed many, many years ago by Jan. And so these are Jan's pictures, and this is kind of an example of Jan's technique. So I just want to make sure that you guys know that. Some of them you might have seen it. So I take the daytime photos, okay, that I take of the areas that I think that are going to be important, and I'm going to print them. And then I take tracing paper and I trace the outline of all the different areas, the grass, the trees, the building, and the urn. And now I spend a bit of time shading in those areas. For me, this really helps me in visualizing what the light levels will look like before any fixtures have even been chosen. So as you can see, all the number ones are the lightest shade, are the lightest shade or the highest level of light, and down to 4, which is the darkest. Okay, so I'm going to go back here. And so we're going to show you that number 1 is the brightest illumination. Okay. And then as you get into 4, which is the grass area, we're toning it down. And we don't typically want to have any more than a 10-to-1 ratio between number 1 and number 4 in light levels. So this slide is showing numbers dictating the light levels in calculations of Lambert's. But to aid in determining the proper levels of light, I was taught to really pay attention to the color of everything that will be lit. Remember, the green grass, the dark green hedging, the light green leaves on some of the trees, and the urn was made of cast with a beige tone to it. I learned very quickly from my mentors that you have to understand and think about how much light will be reflected and how much light will get absorbed. This took me a long time to fully grasp. Once you understood and know what to look for, it's pretty easy choosing your light sources and the correct light levels to make it work. Now we can determine where to place the fixtures, choose the color temperature. And so these are just examples of what Jan does. Sometimes I do hand sketches with the same information and the way I've got it to tell me where I'm going to kind of put the fixtures. And of course, on a new job, that's a lot harder. This was kind of an existing job. And so at this stage too, we've already determined our power distribution and all that other stuff, but we're just focusing, on this right now. This is just the technique. Okay. And this is it finished. So now you can see the results when using, and it's an older picture because it was taken back when we didn't have digital cameras, but you can see that the brightness levels of that urn are a little bit higher. I think the trees at the left and right sides are a little bit brighter than what they are visually, like when in real life. But that urn is number one. You can see that the grass level is number four. And so we've achieved our kind of our goal when we did our client talk with these people, because they, or when Jan did the client talk, is that they, remember the street was on the left. They were worried about security, and they walked down this little pathway, and there's little steps going down to that urn, and then there's something going into the right, into the backyard. So she's achieved that kind of goal from the information that she's got. So, design with predictable results. This is one of my projects, and again, I'm just going to go through and tell you how I approached this job. This was probably the one of my first, I wouldn't say my big first challenge, but it was definitely a challenge because it was a new project. So this project example provides an overview of a new landscape installation. These types of projects, in my opinion, are the hardest, but I always love challenges. The only piece of advice I would like to offer is that you really need to think about every detail and have a plan to prepare for such things as power distribution and underground raceways for your lighting system components. These all will be installed at different phases during construction, and if something is missed, it could be devastating. So this client was interested in having lighting done to, pretty much grass. So they were getting new landscaping put in. The client didn't really know a whole lot about lighting. And I know that at this time with the picture that there were going to be two water features and some large urns. And this particular residence has a very long driveway, and it's very open. You can see the house and the driveway from the road. So here I am, and I'm reviewing the site before the construction begins. And you can see some stakes in the ground, and the guy's truck there, that's not the owner's, but that is the actual concrete guy, because he's going to be pouring the concrete. And he was doing all of the markings, because that orange stake in the middle was to be the center of this fountain. And it's a granite fountain, and it's huge. So we had to figure all that out. And then so now I'm referring to some landscape and specification drawings that I have in the truck. And so I'm trying to measure out, okay, these large urns, they're about 10 feet in diameter. They're at least, I forget the exact height of them, but they're probably about 3 to 4 feet in height. And then they were going to be putting plant dirt within it, and then some sort of material or plantings inside. So the project lighting goals. So what I determined after all of that information gathering was I determined what elements would be illuminated, referred to the documents such as the plans, and investigated all the elements and determined that the reflectance of all the materials. And then the viewing angles I had to think about. So I had to think about all the viewing angles for each element and for their entire lighting scene. Viewing angles from inside the residence and outside in the landscape, prioritizing the viewing angles from most important to the least important. This helped in choosing the proper light fixture, accessories, and the light source. And I had to kind of get all that information from the client by asking them how they plan on using this space, when they were going to be driving in. Do all your guests come in driving? Is everybody going to go to the front door? So those were all questions that I asked and kind of gathered and got answers for. So here it is. I installed all fixtures and completed the night focusing, and I ensured all light sources were hidden. Hiding light sources and night focusing. So I tried to conceal all light sources from all the viewing angles. It was very difficult, and so I had to choose. I had to say, okay, well, the least important angles, they just couldn't be hidden because you're going to see glare shields that are lit. And so I have to communicate that to them and educate the client that that's what's going to happen no matter what. So below grade fixtures under the urn did not contain any glass on the top of them at the surface level. Therefore, the light source was completely hidden because the glass was down below. The number of viewing angles dictated how many people I needed to complete the nighttime aiming and focusing. So if I had 4 different viewing angles that the client could see this, then I wanted to make sure that I had 4 different people at night to help me aim. And here it is at night. And so this job is actually increased now because the whole left side of the house is lit too. So that was an add-on phase. And thank God that I, put in conduit, put the infrastructure in for future add-ons. Very thankful that I did that. And for the cost of it, it was a savior because now all that is poured concrete with little black stones all over the driveway and a pattern. Yes. So it would have been very, very difficult. And so this is what it's from. This is how far back now. So the gate is right behind me and looking in onto the property. And this is at night. And so we used I believe 5 watt 60-degree LED lamps in the urns. So yes, you do get a little bit of that darkness, but I kind of liked the way that it darkened it. I found it interesting, and it didn't bother my emotions, it didn't bother my eyes. It kind of made us, it was aesthetically pleasing. I didn't have any bad feelings. And when I'm looking at light at night, that's what I always kind of do. I want to try to get that warm and fuzzy feeling, and then I'll go in and critique if it doesn't. And I'm not always right, and not all and have not been always right. So I've had lots of corrections. And this is the back water feature. It's just a medium-sized water feature. And they lounge out here. So there's lounging area and a fireplace kind of behind me. There's some chairs to the right and to the left. That's kind of their office right in there. So I attached some downlighting underneath the eaves in some spaces all the way around the back of the house, just to kind of tie things in. Nothing dramatic, nothing too bright, just nice and soft so that people can migrate. And then you, of course, you get the reflection from this water feature that's coming out probably about 10, 20 feet onto the tiles. Okay, so this is the example. This is the third example. So this site, the property is completely mature. It's completely hidden from the public, and hence it's named Hidden Sticks. This was a very large, mature landscape with a vast amount of plantings and large trees. A variety of beautiful, unique species, such as a Dawn redwood tree, outdoor art pieces throughout the landscape. There were many viewing angles from inside the residence and one from the landscape itself, and from within the landscape itself. Sorry, not one. Shielding of fixtures was extremely challenging because of the many viewing angles. Some areas had a 360-degree viewing angle. Accessories such as adjustable extensions and straight cut-off bezels were required because of the amount of perennials that were within the garden areas. This allowed to raise them in the spring and lower them in the fall during maintenance visits. It allowed me to do that. So I had to sell that to them. And it incorporated a lot of downlighting. So again, what I want you to realize is that through all of that information gathering and me visiting the site, I visited the site, I believe, in the early spring. So I didn't even see all of these ostrich ferns, underneath this tree. Okay. And so that was all dirt. So if I didn't ask what was growing in there, and the owner knew, she knew exactly what it was. And so I had to do research on the plantings to make sure on all the whole project. I spent a lot of time. So that's why like it's just I can't stress enough the information that you can gather. Treat them like your best friend, talk to them like your best friend, and get as much information as you can out of them. So the project lighting goals for this job, the elements, I determined what elements to illuminate. And what I do is on a big job like this, because there's a lot of fixtures on this job. So I break it up into small little manageable areas for me. I call them zones or I don't know what people call them, but I call them zones. And so I just break it up into little blocks. So there was the Dawn redwood area, there was a large oak area, there was a stainless steel leaf area, and then there was a linden tree area. So just to give you a bit of a background, so right here, okay, my back is to the residence here, okay. There's a circular driveway, and down past the oak tree, it's a huge, long, winding driveway that goes out, and it's long. It's quite long, but it's all landscaped on either side, just to kind of give you a bit. And then everything over to my right here, there's a swimming pool over there. There's tons of trees, and then there's actually a little walkway that goes down into a golf course. So again, I took lots of daytime pictures and I found each element, and what I did with those pictures, because this was a mature, it was a mature site. I looked for unique and interesting things about each one of those elements. Okay. And an element could be the oak tree. The element could be the red dawnwood tree. So I kind of I dissect it. I'm very analytical. So I kind of look at the bark structure. I look at any unique branching structure. So that's how I go about doing it. And then of course, again, I go back to the reflectance of leaves, the bark, the ground material, and the materials used for outdoor art pieces. So techniques and cohesion. So um, when downlighting decided what to, I when downlighting decided what to light, then fixture placement was critical because of the many viewing angles. Large branches of the trees were used to conceal the light sources. A different temperature color was used to illuminate these stainless steel leaves that they had. I used clear sight lines when I was below a tree to ensure that I could get enough light up through the tree and into the canopy and branching structure. So, sometimes my clients laugh at me sometimes because I'll go and lay right down beside the trunk, and I'm getting paid for this, right? They're looking at me. And so I'm trying to figure out, okay, this is where I've decided where I'm going to put my fixture, and I'm trying to get the light, and I'm visualizing what beam spread I'm going to use and how am I going to get there and how bright do I want it up there, blah, blah, blah. So once the lighting design was completed for the main elements, we then moved on to adding a little splash of light between all the areas to make this lighting scene cohesive. The splash light levels were slightly softer, but not more than a 10-to-1 ratio. So I take all of these little zones that I'm doing, and somehow I got a time together on this job site. Not every job's like that, but you could think about it like that. You do have to tie it in, and not everything needs to be lit. It could be one little fixture with like a 4-watt, 60 or 100-degree lamp, and make sure you have no hot spots. And it's just to fill in the blanks so that it's easier on your eye at nighttime. And you'll know when you look at it, because if it's too dark between two spots, it'll feel uncomfortable. You will feel that uncomfortableness. So as you're navigating up this long winding driveway, you come to this dawn redwood area. This is the area. And to the left, there's some pine trees, and then there's a sumac, tree out back, and a maple tree to the left of that structure. And this lighting scene right in here. Okay, so to the right of us, there's some pine trees and some maple trees. Kind of branches hanging over the driveway. In behind that dawn redwood is actually the cabana for the pool. I think you can see an umbrella way back there. And then they had these fancy, cool little steel trellises, nothing growing on them. And in fact, they had rope lighting on them. And they had some big of these granite lights, 120 lights that were never working properly. So I convinced them to kind of disconnect them. And so this is what we have at night. So I did some ring mounts in the pine trees up there just to kind of gravitate down the driveway. It's very, very soft. And then I flooded that area by the red Donwood. I stuck a little ring mount in that trellis, in that little steel art thing, and kind of went straight down, and it cast all the shadows. And it's funny because, you know, those types of fixtures weren't in the realm of being bought anywhere. And this was the first time that I saw a fixture or a piece of art like this. And then lo and behold, you know, few years down the road, I learn or saw a company that made this type of fixture that is like that.
Hmm. Very nice.
So this is a little bit closer. So you can see the branching structure. So again, so I'm now starting to look at the details and the finer points of things. So I'm really looking at in the Dawn Redwood, and it had like the really, really cool, flaky kind of orangey bark. And it was very, very airy, but it had a lot of needles on the outside of it. And then this is a close-up of it at night. So you can see how I'm trying to draw your attention as they drive by. You're going to see that bark structure, and then I graze the outside of the entire tree. But the reason why this picture is I'm just showing you that, you know, there's some unique bark uh, branches in there. There's some a unique bark. The bark is actually interesting to look at.
Mhm. Mm.
So looking back at the Dawn Redwood area now, with the residence behind me and the very large oak tree to my right, the garden bed under the tree contained a vast amount of ostrich ferns. And this is how you would see it. So I added one downlight to the left. I continued with my ring mounts on some of the branches overhanging the driveway because it was important that they wanted some light, because I guess they take their dogs and they walk down there. So they wanted some light onto the driveway. And in this big oak tree, I have at least 4 to 5, at least, I can't even remember how many, downlights way at the top coming down. I actually used a zoom boom to get the fixtures up. And we talked about that. And so I educated them that, hey, you know what? I'm going to put some of these fixtures need to go in trees. Do you realize the maintenance and how often we're going to have to do that? That's going to come at a cost. That has to be part of your budget. I had to educate them. That was all part of the original information gathering and sharing of information with these people.
Very nice.
So large oak area, the ostrich ferns, and then they have these two really cool, interesting stainless steel leaves. And they're really neat. And I had to light them. So this is what I ended up doing. And I'm like Mark, right? So I'm by myself. So thank goodness they had some infrastructure. They had all the power distribution through this whole place. They had receptacles everywhere. They did have a current lighting system, but it was in shambles. And so I replaced everything, including all the wire, because all of the connections and everything, it was just destroyed. So everything got new wire and new transformers, and all the outdoor receptacles, thank goodness, were controlled by the Lutron system. So it was very, very, I lucked out on that.
Wow.
And so as you can see from here is a close up on the stainless steel leaves, but you can also see the gob of wires going up that tree to show you how many lights are up there and branching out. And that was the least visible spot that I determined would hide. And the client was happy with where I put it, because from their viewing angle, that they hardly would see that.
Mhm.
And then again, they had two little structures here, right in that area. So again, the residence is behind me to my left. And then that's it down during the day. You can see one of those stone lights, the granite lights, which do nothing. They just fired up and they weren't providing it much more. And this is again another picture looking down, so you can see the shadowing effect that I got from mounting a fixture kind of way up. This was an interesting thing. The client was actually, they had some ice damage over the winter, and the client was actually thinking of putting prosthetic limbs on this white pine because she loves it so much. She didn't end up doing it because she got the cost of it. So, but they had a little barbecue area here, and this was like a little niche area that I kind of just lit up for them, not using too many fixtures. But again, some down lights, and I actually put something on his barbecue, like on the, he's got an outdoor countertop out there. So to give him light and a switch underneath, and we switched it. And it's just a low voltage light. So this now, the barbecue area is to the left and that sitting area there, and this leads down to a golf course. And it's pretty steep going down here. Okay. And so he doesn't take his cart there, but he does walk to the clubhouse from where he is, or he did, anyways. And so to the right is the house. And right to the right, they have kind of like a pretty big picture window inside. So again, when I was at the house, I took pictures from within the house, and I went to all the windows and took pictures so that I could see what I can see outside. I wanted to see what I can see. So um, this is how I kind of done it. So there are a total of 12 fixtures in this one area. There are 5 hanging ring mount fixtures. There's 3 in the large tree and 2 in another unlit tree further behind to illuminate the stone staircase going down. The remaining 7 fixtures are all ground stake mounted uplight fixtures, and all light sources are LED 5 watt with varying beam spreads from 40 to 100 degrees.
Nice.
So this is how I created the view, and most people think I'm nuts when I ask to go into their house because, I'm not trying to be rude. I don't want to see your dirty towels, but I really need to take pictures inside your house. And I really usually communicate to them in my phone call when we're setting up this meeting. These are my kind of needs. I need to explain to you, if you really want it done properly, this is how it's got to get done. This is my way, and this is how I do it. It's not like my way, but if you want to get a good investment, this is how I do it. So I took the picture in there, and then I got this. So the landscape lighting provides spectacular and artistic views from within your client's residence during the evening hours all year long. So when those leaves drop, it's still lit. So when I showed them at first and they walked in, and you can read it on the bottom of the slide, you know, their window's now a beautiful piece of art. They keep those blinds open all the time because of that view right there. Even if they have subtle light going on inside, and that's kind of why I, you know, turned the lights on when I took my photo to show, like that's pretty bright there at the table. They can eat and dine there, but you still have that beautiful tree sitting in the back.
That's awesome.
So here's some examples using the design techniques and the processes we have discussed. Okay, so this particular job, this is a smaller residential project, and I wanted to show you another visual technique I use to help the client understand what I have designed and proposed. So they are an older couple. I knew that the light levels were going to have to be slightly higher because as you age, your eyes they don't perceive light as well. So I always have to bump up the light levels or bump up more fixtures to get the light levels up so that they can see it as bright as I do. So they sit and entertain a lot on this rear porch. And there happened to be a forest behind me with several beautiful specimens. And this is what was behind me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, well, we got to do something. I can make a pretty good canvas of that. So again, I took all these pictures, gathered all the information. They were into it, told them kind of like, it'd be really nice to give you, some depth in the background and in the backyard and really make those trees look stunning and give you some art back there. And so I take the photo and I draw arrows using like preview or acrobat, and I draw arrows from where the fixtures will be installed and into what portions or intended portions to illuminate. So this is kind of how I get them to visualize where I'm going to mount these fixtures. And I'm showing them kind of what areas I'm lighting. So as you can see, just using all of those, I've got some down lights incorporated in there and some up lights. And so this is how it turned out. And so I didn't take, well, I do have pictures. I didn't incorporate in the slide, but I also turned my back to that and then took pictures back at the house. Because what I did is I did some downlighting to capture their stairs for safety off the back of the porch, which was back here. So I did, I don't know whether you can see my pointer, you can't because I'm in
Yeah.
presenting view. But as you can see, just right by the post there, I mounted one kind of crossing down towards the one urn. And again, the same distance over to the left, the same distance crossing down. And then I turn the glare shields out this way so that you can't see it while you're sitting on the front or on the back porch. And I also did it to the left over there on the patio just to kind of capture some stuff. So this project has quite a few fixtures on it, but in this show, I didn't show it all. So then I had another project. It's quite large, but he had his own little pond and he colored it and it was like large trees all the way around this. And where they live, they don't get a lot of mosquitoes. There's only, I think, a month where they're really, really bad. So they do tend to come out and park themselves on these chairs and but not too often at night. Their house is quite a ways behind me. And so they have a sitting area back there that they usually sit in, and they look up. And so I illuminated all of the upper trees all the way around the pond, but I intentionally um, so I should just read my notes here because I'm getting off topic. But this picture is taken from the shore of a large pond in a client's backyard. There are several large trees surrounding the entire pond area, which I illuminated. This area where the red chairs sit, I left in darkness all around. So I didn't incorporate any uplights going into the trees. Okay. So the back of the house and their outdoor patio area is almost 200 feet away behind me. I thought this would be a good focal point to draw their eyes into the lighting scene. And so one perfectly placed tree mounted downlight is illuminating these chairs. The subtle light you see at the bottom of the picture is from another downlight located in a tree, which is on this side of the pond. But the rocks, the chair, the one side of that far tree, that's all done with that one downlight. And it's amazing. I look at downlights because you can go back to the house, and I always say, you know, I could have stuck path lights along a walkway, but anytime that I get a chance where I don't have to use path lights, because I could incorporate, I mean, I guess from a business standpoint, I'm pretty bad, but I look at that walkway and I think, well, geez, I could cover that walkway with two downlights rather than five path lights,
Mm.
right? And I like the look of it a little bit better. So this is just another project, one of mine. This is the first time that I was attempting to do some strip lighting, LED strip lighting. So I decided to use it. And the bonus was the planters, silhouetted them, got a beautiful reflection. I lit up the bushes that were quite young in the back. There's a lot of fixtures within this scene. The Japanese red maple, I believe, has 9 fixtures and 3 ring mounts in that Japanese maple. So all soft amounts of light, right? All wide degree beam spreads, 100-degree deep beam spreads, strategically placed around with risers because there was hostas growing underneath it. And so here's that pool cabana. The pool's to the right. That Japanese maple is to the right there. And they had that large maple tree in the back. And then they had all of those. Um, uh, uh, I can't believe I can't remember the name of them. Someone help. They're always bad for ticks. They're green. They're like an evergreen. No one knows.
Brain is blown just by all the plant species you've named.
Yeah, okay. So anyways, I used a 4000K temperature color all back onto those evergreens. That's pretty bad when I don't know the name of them. Okay. And this is just kind of balancing light throughout a project. I found, this is a traction light fixture. I had a client, I had to light that totem pole. He's got a fountain there with a staff. They're native, Indian native. So we made these custom bowlers with a bear, a turtle, and a wolf, and had them all cut out. And they're lining the driveway. So there's quite a few of them going down on the opposite side, alternating, and then I lit the forest area in the back for them. So that was kind of a really cool project. And that's all I got. So I guess I can stop sharing.
Very cool. Wow.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you, Ken.
No problem.
Yeah, that was, I mean,
I
well, go ahead.
Yeah, I hope that I didn't get off too off topic, but what I was trying to do is pull together and how important it is for everybody to understand that information gathering session that you first meet your client. You really need to get your brain involved in the landscape and really need to figure out where and how you're going to approach. I can't stress that enough of how important it is. It's helped me and I've been very successful proceeding forward. It makes it really easy to start that design.
I thought, can't, I mean, it's brilliant. I still go back what you started with. And I think that project that you described, I guess that you worked on with Jan, where you took your picture, and it makes such perfect sense to create the level of light. Because in my mind, when I'm in a project, I think of it as what's interesting to me, but I've never looked at it like you said, the ratio of light levels, that this would be more reflective. So this would be a 1, or this, and putting it in something like that is brilliant. I
Yeah.
love that approach. Yeah, that's good.
So, Greg, Yale, on the other hand, um, he had a very fascinating point. He uses way less fixtures, and I don't even know how he does it sometimes. I still don't know how he pulls it off. Like, I've seen him do a spectacular lighting scene with 3 fixtures. And like it's like this bridge going over like a little waterway, and he just like used 3 fixtures. And the best way to describe what he told me, and not with the bridge scenario, but when you're doing trees and whatnot, he likes going there during the day, and he inverts what he sees. So if he sees where sunlight is and where the shadows are, he wants to light where the shadows are.
Mhm.
That's how he kind of made me think. So that kind of helped me a lot with my downlighting to create shadows, but it's very challenging sometimes. So
That's great. Anybody have any questions for Ken on in terms of part of this process on how you kind of go about to create the design and to maneuver through it? Or I know there was a lot there, and in fact, there's so many great takeaways from Ken's presentation. Like I know for myself, considering again that importance of information gathering, huge. You can't take enough notes, get enough insights from the customer to provide that human-centric approach, that relationship to the designer, to how their needs and the site. The other thing about the light levels was awesome. That's not
Mm-hmm.
discussed enough. And that importance of trying to show contrast between, that's how you create depth. That's how you do a lot of different things to evoke emotion. So that was excellent. And then I also like the part that Ken talked about with critiquing. When you take your pictures, before and after or during the stages of the work, that's a great way to do it. You look at the pictures and how does it feel to you? What are you seeing? Why? Does it feel good? Does it not feel good? Does it feel washed out? Does it feel too dark, overlit? I mean, you can act by critiquing these things. This is a great learning tool. So excellent, Ken. Thank you so much for that.
No problem. I hope it was helpful. I hope that, I hope you can take some stuff away. That's just the way I do it. That's the way I was taught.
Mhm.
I'm not necessarily saying that every designer does that, but that's just the way I was taught, and I like it. I mean, a lot of people are more tech savvy with computers and they do CAD drawings and have intricate drawings. I'm still kind of like a shade guy with a pencil. I'm back in grade 10 art class and I'm still doing shades, and that's just my brain and my age probably showing, but that's how I grew up. That's how I was taught. And it took me a long time, believe it or not, it took me a long time to get really comfortable. And I'm going to tell you, there's still times when I do a design and I figure I'm going to put all the lamps in and I'm going to, mark it all and get all the lamps in. And then I turn it on at night and it's like, there's still times where I have to go in and open the fixtures up and redo the lamps, But then I look at somebody that was my mentor, and that never happened. It was a position maybe here or two or moving the fixture around, but never a lamp change. Like they had it down, like just to a science. They knew it. So, and I'm not quite there yet. And I've been doing this since nine, so yeah, it's just a lot. So have patience, and it's fun. I love the emotional response that I get from my clients. Lots of oohs and ahs, and they're very happy. And I always develop a good relationship enough that I can have a glass of wine with those clients. And that's how well you almost have to get to know them to get the information out of them. And it might take two or three times. And so I strategically say, if I had kind of a short meeting, they're running out of time, and I didn't get all the information because I went back and kind of started doing stuff, I'll ask them, hey, can I come out and remeasure something? Even though I don't need the measurement, I'll just say, hey, can I come back out? That gives me another opportunity to ask them a few questions that I didn't think of or that I didn't get the information from. Works all the time. And sometimes I go back two or three times, so they're thinking, oh, this guy's, he's into it. But for me, I'm thinking, well, I didn't get it out of you the first time, or I totally forgot about it. So, but just tips, tips.
Yeah, that's great.
I have a question, Ken. Um, how many visits do you typically use per design? I mean, is it very different, or is there a pretty streamlined answer as far as how many times you go to a client's house before you are installing?
Um, as many times as you think you need to go there until you're confident that it's going to look good and you've got your bases covered. That's the best advice that I can give you. Um, Typically, I go there, I take all my pictures, I meet with them, I create, at first we talk about budget because budget's really important because I don't want to go back and spend hours upon hours designing on something that they're not going to spend, right? So that's why I always kind of break it up into zones and figure out what priority is what area is priority, and then kind of do that area really, really well because that's within your budget. So I kind of noodle that out right from the get-go to minimize those times of me having to go to site because a lot of my jobs are at least an hour away from my house. So I'm driving with my truck or my trailer. So I want to try to minimize the amount of time. But quite honestly, because it's me and my truck and my trailer, when I'm there, I don't care how long it takes me. I'm probably the biggest business loser there is, but I love it so much that if I've got to take an extra day or 2 days, I'll drop my trailer and ask them if I can leave it there. And then I'll go back because I want to make sure it's right. And I want to make sure that their Christmas present is beautifully wrapped and it's ready for them to look at by the time I'm done with it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope
I have
so.
one more. Do you charge a design fee?
You know what? Not if I have not if my phone call vetting has gone really well. But if I was doing a lot of designs and I were finding people that I don't like to give my designs out. So
Right.
this is the way I kind of do it. So I could offer my designs to and do a design service and charge out accordingly. Okay. 150 bucks an hour, whatever, 200 bucks,
Yeah.
depends on how much detail you want to go in for your design. Are you going to specify and provide specification sheets? Are you going to engineer it and put a transformer schedule and a fixture schedule? We can go on, right?
Right.
So, but with clients, I try to vet them and know whether or not they're a conceivable and prospect whether we're suited for each other, I guess is what I'm saying. And so I screen them out and then I'll do it. There's probably been in over all the years that I've been doing it, there's been 2 times where I've given a proposal out and early in my years. And so I've learned that I'm not going to do that anymore because I just gave them a shopping list to go and look. So in my proposals, all I do is I just say, I'm going to put 10 fixtures here. I'm going to put 15 fixtures here, and we're going to illuminate this tree. And I'm not going to give them any lamp information. I'm going to show them a specification for a fixture or what type of fixture, but I'm not going to give them any more information than that because that's just how I do things.
Yeah.
So does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
think
Can
that, oh, go ahead.
Well, following what Andy asked and what you said, I mean, and it kind of maybe I'm trying to see, do you pretty much go to your clients and kind of like all the questions that you're asking in the details, you're trying to sell them an experience perhaps and tap into that and not as much per fixture, like that's not even as relevant. You're just trying to sell them like or share in your vision of an experience and what you're going to be creating. And it could be, maybe it's not relevant to tell how many fixtures.
Well, I don't when I'm there on the original meeting, but I find that I have to educate my clients. I have to
Mhm.
educate them about the difference of a wall sconce on the front of their house that has clear glass on it. And I pull up at night and I drive my car and I look at that and then I look away in my car and I have spots in my eyes. And those are what I call glare bombs. Okay, so I have to educate them, and I subtly say after a couple times to say, the easiest way to fix that is to put that on a dimmer and take the glass out of it and go take it to a place and get it frosted, sandblast, and frost the glass. And then now you're not going to see and get that glare. So I have to educate your client. You have to really educate them to what you do and make them understand that all outdoor lighting systems require maintenance. This is an investment. And if you want it to last and you want it to look as good as what it did when you first installed it or when we first installed it or you get it installed, it needs routine maintenance. And you have to push that. You have to educate them. So you have to educate them about everything. Do you need to tell them about,
Mhm.
I need an adjustable stake or I need to put the light here? No, I'm not. But am I going to say, hey, you know what? That big oak tree, it was really dense and it has a lot of sucker branches in there. Do you get pruning services done? Oh yeah, we have pruners that come in and do it, tree guys that come in and do it. Oh, would you be open to having some pruning done so we can open it up and get,
Mhm.
it's going to be healthier for the tree and it's going to allow more light to get in. And they're on it. Like they're right in there. So those are the types of conversations that I try to have with them and just be open and honest with them.
Thank you.
Very
Hi.
good.
What size of a crew do you typically work with on your installations? And I'm sure it can range on the size of a regular size lot to an estate size lot, but do you have a typical size?
Me, myself, and I.
What?
Boom.
It's like me
Me
too.
and myself and I.
Really?
Yes.
That's awesome.
So and you're limited. I'm going to tell you this because if you're a business owner, I work for my business. I don't own my business. There's a difference, everybody. Okay. If you want to run your business and own it, you need employees. And you got to hire those employees and trust those employees and educate those employees if that's where you're going. Me, I work for my business. So that's why I'm the way I am. I'm the shittiest business person there is in the world. I make enough money and I'm happy and but I totally enjoy it. I love going to work every day. I love what I'm doing. Am I getting tired of burying wire? Yeah, that's why I got two 23-year-old twin boys that usually come out and help me if I got a big job and I need a lot of wire buried. And I'll, ask a friend to come and pay him. I'm on a residential property. Is it right? I shouldn't be paying anybody. Up here in Canada, you're not allowed to do that, right? So I have to be careful, but I don't want the headaches. I was an electrician for a long time and I had it, other people that I had to work with, and it's just not enough. I've had enough of the headaches.
Awesome.
What about for nighttime adjustments? Who do you take with you for a nighttime adjustment?
Totally friends. And sometimes I've gotten the homeowner to come in, their kids, believe
That's
it or
awesome.
not. So
Yeah,
that's how good of a relationship I've
I
had
love
with them.
that. Very cool.
So I don't ask them, but if they're out there, hey, would Johnny mind going out there and just tweak that fixture 1 minute? I just want to get it right. And they're all over it. I wouldn't ask them prior to it,
Yeah,
but that's how I do it. So I'll
very.
set that all up. So, I'll put 3 or 4 guys in my truck and we'll go and do what we got to do and away we go. It's really long if you have to do it by yourself and you lose your night vision because when
Right.
you go over and reach to a fixture, now you're getting bright lights. Now you got to wait 10 to 15 minutes to really see what the light's doing again. And sometimes I've been at jobs till 2:30 in the morning mucking around, and then I got an hour's drive home. So, my wife's looking at me like I got crazy balls happening in my head, but that's the way it is. That's what I do. So I'm a strange duck when it comes to that.
Hey, Ken, I got a quick question for you because this is one thing I'm curious about. If you don't have a set of plans or to work with, let's say you can't get a site plan, you can't get a landscape plan, whatever the case may be, how do you or what's your process for being able to draw up the site?
Well, the best thing that I suck at that, Mark, to be quite honest with you.
All right.
But sometimes I'll get Google Earth and kind of get a bigger picture, or I have a drone. And so I
Oh,
fly the drone up and I'll take an above photo and away you go. Am I going to have precise measurements like AutoCAD? Absolutely not.
no.
If the client's going to require it and that's what I have, well, when you get to that stage, I'm probably working with a landscape architect, so they're probably providing me a PDF anyways.
Mhm.
So, I really haven't had to be a Jan like that. You know what I mean? Like I haven't really had to create all of that. So I'm still kind of a hand sketch guy. But other people have great methods. They can, if they're fluent with AutoCAD, it's awesome. Sometimes clients will have those files, but if you don't, it's those pictures. And you know, the drone I think ran me like because it's a pretty good drone. It ran me like about 2 or 3 grand Canadian, which is way less for you guys because your dollar is way more than ours. But that was the best investment. At least you can go up during the day and take picture of the site, and that's typically what I use that drone for is like a topology picture, Mark.
Great. Awesome. Very good. Thank you. Anybody else? Any other thoughts, questions? Go ahead, Jeff.
Last question, or who? Go ahead. Somebody was before me, maybe.
Do you remember that little sculptural form that you were talking about lighting up? You called it a trellis.
The tour.
It's a
Yes.
tutor, right? It's a tutor
Yeah.
or an obelisk. Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
Do you just do low voltage or do you use line voltage?
Oh no, I used 12 volt.
Yeah.
So I used a little ring mount in there and I ran 12 volt
I
up
mean,
on the back.
in general,
Oh,
work.
oh,
Yeah.
oh. Okay, so for all of the lighting,
Mhm.
yeah, it's all 12 volt. Yeah. I have yet to have had like a metal halide fixture or a par 20 or a par 30. I've yet to have to use one of them. Um, I I haven't been on a project where I would feel that I would need that. Because that kind of some of them would just be blasting a lot of light. But if I was in, uh, you know, it depends on where I was in the country. If I was in California and you had one of those great big tall trees, yeah, you would probably need 120 to light something up and get the punch up there. So,
But
but
you
no,
have
I haven't.
frost thaw. Do you use conduit? Is your cable and conduit?
Okay, so I always run cable conduits always underneath grass in the transition going into the gardens and up until a point, whether it's the foundation or a rock or a concrete structure. And I go through a lot of wire. I run my wires where they're not going to get hit. Let's put it that way. So I don't run the whole job in conduit, not the entire thing, but I do run out into those grass areas. Yes.
Yeah.
And of course, if you were doing a new installation, so a newer installation that I did, like say that swimming pool wall, that was a big job. That happened over 3 years. It was both front and back. The majority of all of that is all the feed lines. Um, are in conduit, but then they branch out. So the feed line might stop, say at like at close to a river birch, not too close to the trunk structure, but because of the roots. But the conduit will end, and that will be my feed for that tree, and then I'll branch out, with 4 fixtures. So I have plenty of feeds going out into the ground. And if they are buried in the ground, like I said, I usually store them where I know no one's going to be digging. They're taped up, bundled up, hidden as best as I could. Am I the best at it? Well, you know what? I haven't had any issues whatsoever with any damage and any connections since I began. So, knock on wood, I guess I've been lucky.
Hmm.
Question
guys-
that I was going to ask
Oh,
was going to potentially
go ahead.
occur to Jeff's question, but when you get into positions where you need 120 for a transformer, are you just subbing that out to an electrician to get your 120 to those areas? Or
Wow. So I'm an electrician by trade. So, but listen. So up here in Canada, all right, you need what they call a master's business license. So I have not pursued my master's business license because they want $800 a year for a master's business license, and for the amount of 120 electrical work that I do, um, I just didn't find it uh, useful. I didn't find the need to do it. I can go work for an electrical company anywhere in Canada, but I can't pull out a permit to work on putting a outside receptacle on somebody's house. So I have a good buddy that lives down the street. Have been friends with him for a long time. He owns his own electrical company, so I get him to do it. And on other jobs, where I use, say, below grade transformers, that job with the pool in the wall in the back. Out front, we used Qtran transformers in the ground. Their electrician ran all of the conduit out to that. So then I had to educate him because he's never done it before. So this is how we need it. And every vault had 2 cassettes and they were switched. So yes, I know in the States that some places you need to be an electrician to do the installations.
Nice.
that's it.
That was a bucket of information, Mark.
I know. This is
I'm
great,
parched.
man. I tell you what. Very cool. All right. I guess we probably ought to shut her down for tonight, but Man, I tell you, thank you, Ken. I hope we can get you back some other time. Maybe we can set something else up for a future class or classes. I think this was wonderful. You gave a ton of information, and this was a gold mine for everybody watching. Thank you.
You're very, very welcome.
This-
And Mark, thanks for having me. Yeah, I just hope I know it was a lot of information. I know it helped.
This
I hope
recording
it
will
was.
be available.
Yes, it will. If you want to watch it
Thank you.
again for all of our members, tell the other members, whatever you want to do. It's there.
Thank
Very
you,
good.
everyone. I apologize. I'm going to have to jump off real quick.
Okay.
Ken
Yeah.
is amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Good
Thanks,
night, everybody.
everybody.
All
All
right.
right, we'll see you next time.
Okay.
That was definitely some great information.
Thank you.
No problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah,